think about winging it when it comes to career planning and writing that resume?
Well, not too much, actually. Now, it's funny you should say that because many people do wing it when they write a resume.
Yeah.
And they find that they don't have the greatest
Throw
success.
stuff on the wall, see what sticks.
Yes, because it's one of those things it's funny, people have heard for many years how to do one. I think at a fairly early age we learned about it. Some of the basics, and some of those basics no longer really apply. But above and beyond that, there's not. It's hard to find a resource, let's say at a bookstore, that gives you just the lowdown in a very concise way. Most books about resume writing are like 500 pages long. I mean,
Resumes for dummies.
Well, there needs
Does that
to
exist?
Yeah, well, there needs to be. And, it just gets extremely complicated. And, I mean, there are many topics to talk about, but there are some basics that you can focus on if you are attempting to write your own resume that can just make a tremendous difference.
Yeah.
And if there ever was one element of a resume that you don't want to, quote, wing, unquote, it would be the application of keywords into the resume.
And first, let's tell everybody what keywords are.
Right. Well, basically, they're nouns or noun phrases that have to do with elements of your experience in a resume. Now, that's important, too, because, you don't just want to create a table in your resume and put words in there that don't actually have to do with your experience just so that you can get
That
it.
sound good?
Right. Just so that you can get past the software. I mean, clearly you don't want to be disingenuous ever.
Yeah.
But it's just not a good way to go, because for very obvious reasons we don't even need to go into. So you want those keywords that you end up using to have to do with your actual experience.
Yeah.
And they are nouns or noun phrases, as opposed to like the action, like it used to be that resume writing, it was pretty much all action verbs, action phrases. And
Can I give us an example?
Sure. Those are still important because when you're conveying your accomplishments in a resume, you pretty much have to use that type of verbiage.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting those keywords in there, the software that is used, and I'll get into that also in a second, is looking for those nouns or noun phrases. And you want to get as specific as you possibly can, and I'll explain that. So, in other words, like the old resume writing style that almost exclusively used those action verbs and phrases would say something like, and this is somebody who's like in the IT industry, obviously. So before the phrase would be troubleshot, repaired, maintained, and monitored computers to component level, administered networks, wrote scripts, and conducted diagnostic tests. Okay.
That's not Heather's resume, that's for sure.
Not mine either. Wouldn't be mine. After would be something like extensive component level troubleshooting, repair, maintenance, and monitoring of supercomputers, PCs, Macs, Sun workstations, and Unix-based workstations for National Energy Research Supercomputer Center. So, in other words, and of course this is a very specific example, but in other words, you should get as specific as you possibly can, because that's what this keyword search software is looking for. It's looking for these industry-specific terms, jargon, phrases that have to do with your specific experience. If you are someone who does process improvement, let's say, it would be something like Six Sigma would be a great example of a noun or noun phrase, that a keyword software is going to look for, or Kaizen processes or process mapping or something like that. So it's like a gerund or a noun phrase that's going to be specific to your experience, but not just to your experience. So not just for the jobs that you've done, but even more importantly for the job that you're targeting.
I see.
Provided that you've had that type of experience or something at least fairly related in your prior work history as well. So you're not only trying to convey what you've done, you're also trying to hit those things that have to do with the jobs that you want.
Right.
Because that's what this resume is trying to obviously do ultimately. So,
quick question. When did computer software replace people scanning resumes?
Yeah, great question. This is a phenomenon that, believe it or not, is almost 20 years old. About 94 is when you started seeing. Now, granted, not too many of us had the internet in 1994, but it did exist, and there were job sites and jobs search sites and company websites started popping up right around 1994, give or take.
Okay.
And so then at that point, companies started having the capacity for building electronic databases to store resume information. So that, at least in 94, began the process of replacing the paper file, whereas you would create, your resume on a Smith Corona typewriter in the old days and snail mail it in to a company, and they would put it in a file, and they would have absolutely no way of searching multiple documents simultaneously to find out whether you had certain words in there. But as the technology happened and evolved, now that's exclusively what they use. So you don't even have, unfortunately, with some of the larger companies and the more popular jobs, you don't even have a chance at getting your resume looked at if you don't.